Hello again, and welcome back. This is episode 6. Sorry, Imprisoned, and this to me is where the show really starts to get good. Not great necessarily, but it starts to get really good. It starts to have elements that are carrying in from episode to episode, or is going to have a bit more of an overarching story. Now, the last 5 episodes were good. Make no mistake, they were good, but they're very much more episodic in nature. That feels more like the Nickelodeon notes, because Nickelodeon, again, their wheelhouse is in episodic television. It's not so much in serialized television. So the first 5 episodes definitely played a bit more like pockets, like you could kind of place them anywhere in the airtime, and it would sort of flow better. Like you can follow them, but they're more or less meant to be kind of episodic by themselves. This one kind of not only starts some of the elements that are going to carry forward episode to episode, but season to season. And yeah, I remember liking this one. It's still pretty decent. So Team Avatar is kind of in the middle of the woods, just camping out, and they don't really have any food. They can't find much, but they find a boy, a young man rather, named Haru, who's earthbending, and they follow him to his village, where it turns out that the Fire Nation has been occupying this village for 5 years, and earthbending is outlawed under the punishment of being taken away from the village and imprisoned on a shipping platform. So, while Team Avatar is there, they kind of bond with Haru. Him and Katara form a bit of a nice friendship. And one night they save an old man who was about to die in a mine collapse, and Haru earthbended the rocks out of the way. But in a rather shocking twist, at least for me as a kid, the old man outs Haru as an earthbender. Haru is arrested by the Fire Nation. He's taken to the shipping platform. And Katara and Team Avatar take it amongst themselves to find where he is and ultimately rescue the other prisoners who have been imprisoned on this rig. They find their task might be a little harder than others, as the prisoners there for the most part have given up hope and have surrendered themselves to their fates. But Team Avatar, they won't give up, and they'll go to any length to make sure that the prison is liberated. It's a decent episode. We're still kind of at that point where I can't think of a ton of major talking points, but it was definitely a good episode. I think this one, more than a lot of others, found a much better balance for things like the comedy and the drama. Not that there's necessarily high comedy and high drama in this show, but the drama and comedy that is there is balanced very well. It doesn't feel shoehorned or really obvious or out of place. It feels very natural, not only to the flow of the story, but to the characters in which they represent. I'll think of some examples in a second. The animation also, I'd say, got a lot better in this one compared to some of the others, and I don't know if that's because Dave Filoni directed it, which, if you know Dave Filoni, he's responsible for basically like the best stuff to come out of Star Wars in like the last 20 years or so. You know, he created the Clone Wars TV show, among other things. So basically anything Dave Filoni touches is pretty much going to turn into gold. And he directed this episode, so kind of figures it'd be a pretty decent episode. So I will think of something. I'm very sorry. I'm kind of doing this one on the rush today. It's good. I guess. So this episode marks the first appearance of a guest star, Kevin Michael Richardson, who in the voice acting world, he's definitely been around for quite a while, and you might recognize his voice best as the principal from American Dad, or Gantu from the original Lilo and Stitch movie. And here he plays Haru's father named Taru, as well as a couple other background voices. He tends to do that a lot. My favorite, though, and I absolutely love this, is George Takei, Sulu from Star Trek. He plays the prison warden, the warden of the prison. Don't know why I said that. And he does good. I always really like George Takei as an actor. I especially like George Takei as a voice actor, because whenever so George Takei, he's kind of got this reputation in the professional world and kind of as a person. We all know George Takei. He's the, oh my guy, which is funny because that line was never said in any show that he did. It was done on the Howard Stern show, kind of by accident. If you don't know the story, Howard Stern caught George Takei by surprise and said, "Hey, your voice is really low, so you must be really packing it down there. And he just went, oh my. So that's where that came from. And as an actor, basically outside of Star Trek, a lot of George Takei's stuff is kind of hamstringing him by the fact that he's known as the oh my guy. But I do like him sometimes in voice acting because they do try and get away from that. Like in Adventure Time, he plays a Ricardo, a heart, whose entire goal in that episode he appeared in was to rip out Princess Bubblegum's heart and make out with it. I only did that close-up because they do a close-up in that episode when he says that line. But I like George Takei here because not only is his voice very distinct, but the way he's acting, it's almost like he's doing an impression of himself. I don't know how else to really to describe it, but the way he delivers his lines and says stuff, it's almost like he is trying to do an impression of himself, and consequently it does make the villain much more comedic maybe than he should be, but it is still kind of humorous. You know, there's such points like these guards, they catch Appa hovering around the prison, and they say, "Sir, we saw a giant flying bison." "What?" "It was a giant flying buffalo, sir, with an empty saddle." "Well, which was it, a buffalo or a bison?" "I don't think that matters, sir." And it ends up a bit of a humorous scene. There's a couple bits of this episode that always kind of stood out to me. Not that they're like super shocking or anything, but one is, again, as I mentioned earlier, the old man who turns in Haru. I don't know if that was shocked a lot of kids, but when I first saw it, it was kind of a bit of a shock for me, and especially in a kid's show, just because when you save a person like that, you know, it doesn't matter what the rules are. You kind of just keep your mouth quiet because, hey, your life was saved. And I don't know if this was either because they promised him like a reward, or the old man is just so terrified he had to out the Earthbender, but I'll be honest, you can debate the ethicalness of Luigi. You remember the Luigi, the Medicaid CEO guy? You know Luigi in this case. It's kind of like when the McDonald's worker outed him out because there was a reward promised, only for the authorities to not give him the reward. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but that's kind of the vibe that scene gave for me. So that always stuck out in my head. There's also a really good scene rather, but also line in this show where Katara is talking to Haru, and Haru is explaining how he lost his father years ago. And by lost his father, I mean his father was taken away and in prison. He didn't die, but the only way he can feel close to him is with the earth bending. And I'll try and get a picture of it so I can show you what I mean. But Katara, throughout this whole show, she wears a necklace that's got a little pendant on it, which used to belong to her mother, and after her mother was killed in a Fire Nation raid, it's the only thing she has left of her mother and to remember her by. And there's a great moment where Haru says, "But it's not enough, is it?" And she says, "No, it's not." And I know that's not a super profound scene, but something about how kind of when you lose someone you love so much, it doesn't matter what you have to remember of them, it's never going to be enough. It's just always, you're going to wish you had the person. I know that's a little obvious, but that scene sort of stuck out to me. I thought it was a very well done moment. The stuff on the prison is kind of cool. I do like how this episode also is kind of our first hint of how the Fire Nation is affecting the rest of the world. Now, obviously, we've seen Zuko in previous episodes, and kind of in Omashu when the gate guards are a little mistrustful of people. But this one we see a village that's been occupied for 5 years because the village has coal mines, and the coal mines are used to fuel the warships. So that's kind of our first big hint of how the world has been changed by the Fire Nation over the last 100 years. And with that said, there's not a ton more I can say. Haru makes his first appearance in this show. It won't be his last. So this is kind of the first, well, not the first episode to have recurring characters, but it's another one to have a character that'll recur. I will admit, I do like the cliffhanger ending of this show where it turns out Katara lost her necklace while staging a prison riot, and it turns out someone found the necklace. Zuko found the necklace. So yeah, that's going to lead to something that's going to carry over into a few episodes. I kind of love that shot. I don't know why Zuko's at the prison. I don't know how he figured out to track them there, and then where he's tracking them from this point. But hey, Zuko's got Katara's necklace. That's a great way to end this episode. And Yeah, that's about it. Sorry again if I'm not getting a ton of material out of these earlier episodes, but just got to go through them one by one. But it is a good episode. I will say that's about it. It's never enough. I'm basically Columbo, as some people will say. I did like how this episode also felt like Katara and Sokka are coming more into their own as characters. Like, not that they were bad before, but there was sort of a sense with the way they were written and directed and animated that they kind of didn't feel, they always sort of feel a little archetypey in sort of how they're done. Like Sokka's always the comic relief, and Katara is always the emotional support, and Aang is the main character goofball. And this episode finally, to me at least, started to kind of really get these fine-tuned bits of definition to their character. Like Katara is the emotional support, but she's very hopeful, she's very courageous. Like the fact that this guy she's known only for a day, excuse me, she's willing to basically stage a prison riot to help him escape is really cool. Sokka got a lot smarter in this episode, and in many respects, he is kind of clown shoes in this show, but kind of like Krillin from Dragon Ball. Hey, there's a lot more to him than you think. He's actually a very smart character, and we're going to find out in later episodes. He can be really smart. He's very creative. He's often very intuitive about technology, at least the technology of this ancient era, and coming up with various strategies. So I like this episode as kind of the first one to really sort of dive in and start to fine tune those little points. For sure, this time. That's about it. Good episode. Good sort of show starting to get on its feet for me again. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one. Till next time, onwards and upwards, my friends.